I asked 9 game developer YouTubers to share their best tips, and these are the responses that I got. In the past, I've shared some of my own advice on this channel, but I'm only one person and I only have so many tips, so this time I'll be leaving it to these devs. There'll be tips for coding and game design, some Unity specific stuff, and also some advice on motivation and planning. So let's get into it. The first tip is from the team at Blackthorn Prod. Blackthorn Prod is a game dev YouTube channel filled with tutorials, devlogs for the games that Noah and Liam have developed, and their main series where game devs collaborate without communication. From Blackthorn Prod, first of all, lead a balanced lifestyle, where the aim is to maximize your focus during the time spent in front of the computer. 4 hours of concentrated, productive work vastly outweighs 8 that are clogged with distractions and low energy. When not on the computer making games, what inspires, energizes, and leads to better health is exercise, meeting up with friends, and going on adventures. As creators, a part of our work is to craft worlds and inspire. If we ourselves lead uninspiring lives, void of adventure, stuck in front of a screen, then we lower our chances of bringing to life games that feel adventurous, inspired, and exciting. Time away from screens can also be spent learning other skills that still feed into game dev, such as drawing, sculpting, board game design, writing stories in the mountains to become better storytellers, learning new skills such as cooking, robotics, playing an instrument, and all these may lead you to want to create a full game based on or inspired by your new hobby. End quote. In my personal experience, I've never focused on spending as much time as possible on game development. I prioritize things like running cross-country, being with friends, and playing guitar on a similar level to game development and YouTube, and because of this, whenever I do work on my game, I usually feel a lot more inspired and productive. But back to Blackthorn Prod, and he has a second piece of advice. Collaborate. This will lead to more enjoyable work, and the results will far exceed what is created by a single pair of hands, especially in the long term. Collaboration does come with a host of challenges and can go wrong, but it's worth mastering/finding the right team. This is also a great way to reduce pressure, learn faster, feel part of a larger picture, and be more inspired. Game dev is also perfect for teamwork because there are so many disciplines involved, from art to programming. Work on small solo projects from time to time, focus the bulk of your efforts on testing new collaborations, meeting developers, sharing knowledge, and learning from your peers and the great masters of the craft. Next up is a game design tip from Mental Checkpoint, who is a game developer and YouTuber who creates videos on game design as well as his own game projects. There are several sorts of games where you want to incentivize strategy creation, from RPGs to online MOBAs. But how do you even begin to design for strategy? Well, the answer, according to Mental Checkpoint, is rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, I'll let him explain. If you're ever in a pickle trying to design units with strengths and weaknesses for your game, just rock, paper, scissors it. Seriously, the most known and competitive games out there are basically slightly modified versions of rock, paper, scissors. In StarCraft, a missile turret beats a phoenix, which beats a banshee, which beats a zerling, and the cycle continues. The entire Pokemon type system is also using the same trick. Fire beats grass, beats water, and the cycle repeats. You can take this even further to actual moves instead of units, like in Street Fighter, where an attack beats a throw, which beats a block. Obviously, in order to inject a little chaos, make sure you don't go for a binary X beats Y, but instead Y is weak against X. If anything, this is a great starting point for a potentially more involved and balanced competitive system. End quote. Creating interesting meta for players to experiment with is one of the most challenging things to get right in game design, so having a tried and proven method like rock, paper, scissors as a base is very helpful. But to add on to Mental Checkpoint's advice, I'd like to remind you to always keep in mind what your ultimate goal is with each piece of game design. For instance, in my game Project Seaborn, which is an action RPG, I think the game is more fun if you are switching party members often and also using plan state skills in combat. So in order to promote this behavior in players, I implemented a damage type system, where certain enemies take more or less damage from different types of attacks and weapons. So you are incentivized to not only switch between party members and use their unique skills to take out enemies during combat, but also to plan ahead and create a flexible team composition in order to be able to handle lots of different types of enemies. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, then be sure to like and subscribe. Okay, shameless plug over. Next up is Da Fluffy Potato, who is a developer with a very unique name who specializes in Pygame, which is a programming library for Python. He has lots of tutorials and projects built in Pygame on his channel, but his advice here is all about learning game development. Quote, "The only unique piece of advice that I can think of is that if you are making games by yourself just to make games instead of getting a job, then you shouldn't put off learning to draw or compose music. Just make stuff as you go and avoid pre-made assets. Even if it's bad right now, you'll get better over time. And generally, asset packs end up being rather restrictive, especially if you aren't willing to spend money, end quote. Game developing isn't just programming and design. Art, music making, and sound effects also play huge roles in the creation of any great game. Now personally, I think that being able to integrate and use pre-made assets in a tasteful way in your game is actually a skill in itself. But if you put in the time to learn how to make all these things yourself now, you'll have these skills for the rest of your life, and you'll be able to make all sorts of things in the future, game development or otherwise. And coming up next is Chatterbox. He's made a lot of things, from some Unity projects to his own game engine and even a controller, and he has a lot of advice for optimization, code organization, and learning. Quote, don't neglect optimization. Make sure to profile and check for any areas that might need a little refactoring. By improving the performance, you can make sure your game runs better on lower tier machines, which will improve everybody's experience and make them a bit happier with your game. At the same time, don't spend too long optimizing or overcomplicate your code trying to make it run faster. End quote. So, optimization is critical in making sure that your game can be ran by as many people as possible on as many platforms as possible. But how do you optimize? Well, that's a huge subject to cover, and I'm not going to be covering it in this video, but I will mention that the two most impactful things that I have personally found for optimization are optimizing rendering and making sure to have object pooling for objects that need it. Back to Chatterbox, quote, another general code tip might be learning about inheritance to clean up code and reduce duplication, and also maybe understanding recursion, which applies really well to game development, something I didn't realize for a long time. A good architecture can make programming so much easier, end quote. I've actually got a video that covers some of these programming tips and fundamentals that you can check out if you're interested in things like inheritance and events. And one last piece of advice from Chatterbox, quote, maybe a good tip for developers who want to improve could be learning to use different technologies, engines, programming languages, etc., as it can improve proficiency, keeps you learning, and some of the new stuff you learn can be applied to old stuff. A decent example of this could be in making a game using TypeScript in the web browser if you're a Unity dev, or maybe giving Unity Bolt a go if you're an Unreal dev with blueprints. Learning how to use different tools will make you a better programmer, period. And beyond that, it'll also look fantastic on a resume or portfolio to have experiences working with lots of different engines, programming languages, and style of games, and also making software outside of games as well. Plus, as I can personally attest to, it's fun to make lots of different types of games, so try it out. Next up is Samyam, who runs a YouTube channel where she creates tutorials for Unity and also creates her own games with the engine.
If you've been stuck on the same problem for more than an hour, take a 10-minute break. More often than not, your brain will subconsciously work in the background to find a solution. Even a quick break can help refresh your mind to come back to the problem at a new angle. And if you're tired of working on the same task, try working on another more fun feature, which can also help with burnout.
This relates to what Blackthorn Prod was saying earlier. Whenever it comes to staying on task, it can often seem like the best way forwards is just to plow through. But sometimes planning out your development time so you switch between different tasks is a great way to stay productive and motivated. Plus, it's more fun. Next up is a duo of game devs. Hive is a YouTuber who is developing an open-world action RPG called Windshire. And Matt Bull is a developer who is working with a team to create a local multiplayer game called Slap It Together. And from Hive, one thing I've always personally believed in is telling your close friends that you are making something. Having friends and family know that you're trying something will make you more likely to stick with it, as you are having outside pressure, if that makes sense. That's why I started making devlogs and started my community, is to keep me accountable in a sense. And from Matt Bull. Plus one with this. Luckily, I've got a fantastic, beautiful team, but it's important to have a support network in life anyways. Tell them what you're working on, when the next milestone is, etc. I wasn't a fan of doing devlogs with it, but that was because I shifted my focus too much and my mental health was dipping hard. I definitely plan to make a big video/doc going over the trials/tribulations of Slap It though. End quote. Personally, one of the main reasons that I started on Couch Combat, which is a split-screen FPS, was to share it with my friends. Playtesting it was messy and often very glitchy, but over time, with feedback from these friends, the game became a much more enjoyable and smooth but still chaotic experience. Having your friends playtest your game is great not only for improving your game, but also just because it's fun. And now the tip that you have been waiting for. Iya is the ultimate game developer and his advice is legendary. Quote, if you believe in yourself, then you can learn how to ride a bike. End quote. Okay, but seriously, Iya is a YouTuber and developer who is working on an open-world witch RPG in Unity and who also made a Mario car crash simulator. And his advice is all about starting game development. Quote, my honest thought is that I see a lot of people who want to be perfect from the beginning and they psych themselves out by not being willing to make mistakes and just get started making stuff. You'll make mistakes as a game dev. You'll do something and then a few months later realize how stupid or unoptimized it is. It's part of creating. I also think the #1 skill is learning how to troubleshoot and break down problems problems into their different components. On a lot of projects, things will be so complex that no one will be able to help you to just fix the specific issue that you're having, and a lot of the time you'll have to kind of figure it out on your own, or worst case scenario, send somebody else your entire project." End quote. Troubleshooting is a mix of learning how to read your code and find issues, and knowing how to ask others for answers. Googling will honestly work 90% of the time, but whenever it doesn't, there are places like the official Unity Discord and other servers or other game engines where you can find tons of people willing to help. Each game you make isn't just a game though, it's also a step in your game development journey, so hurry up and make mistakes now, so that way you can build on them and make better games in the future. And finally, ButWhyLevin is a YouTuber and Unity game developer. He's been working on an online multiplayer pirate game alongside his own networking solution for Unity, and his advice follows up Aya's. Quote, "Learning how to debug is critical, which also includes learning how to effectively Google or use ChatGPT these days for whenever you get stuck. And in a similar vein to Aya's first point, just start. Over the years, I've seen a ton of people just research in an attempt to determine what engine they should use or what language they should learn first. Doing some research beforehand is obviously a good thing, but it's also easy to get caught up in it because it feels like you're being productive, even though, at least past a certain point, you're not really accomplishing anything. Start with a bit of research and then actually jump in and get your hands dirty. If it turns out that you made some suboptimal choice, you can always pivot to another engine, language, or tool, but at least now you have some hands-on experience regarding what you need and want from the options you're choosing between. And chances are that what you've already learned will in some capacity come in handy with the other options too. That's significantly better and more effective than spending weeks trying to analyze your options from afar, which I have unfortunately seen people do. And also obligatory, don't start your game dev journey by attempting to build an MMORPG. End quote. Once again, the importance of troubleshooting and debugging cannot be overstated. It's like 50% of your time in game development will probably be spent trying to get rid of all these errors. If you want to check out any of these developers, then they are all linked in the description below. If there are any game development subjects that you want me to make a video over, then comment them down below as well. And also, if you want to check out my main game, Project Seaborn, which is an action RPG with a unique battle system, then click this end screen to watch the first 100 days of development. Thanks for watching, bye.